Who was Chesterton?
Well, he was born in 1874 at the height of Britain's Victorian power and empire into a very prosperous family in London. His family were actually the owners of the estate agents Chestertons, who are still around today. And they were a very creative family. His father retired young due to ill health and spent his whole life doing art and crafts as an amateur artist. And Chesterton sort of grew up in a very creative environment in London, not a religious one. They rarely went to church. They were sort of Unitarian Universalists with a general belief in God and goodness, but nothing very specifically Christian. And he had one brother who he got on very well with and argued with all the time. And then at school, he was fantastically undistinguished. He spent his time amusing himself and his classmates rather than studying. And yet at the end of it, the headmaster told his mother, 6 foot of genius, ma'am. Cherish him, cherish him. They managed to make an impression in spite of not bothering at all with any kind of work. And then after school, he had a couple of years rather casually studying at the Slade School of Art and University College London. Didn't complete any sort of degree, didn't really do very much, and then drifted into publishing, became a publisher's reader and then a journalist, started writing reviews and articles, and discovered this was his métier. So he claimed that he was in it because it was the easiest way to make a living. He was certainly very well suited to it. From an early age, he had written and drawn endlessly. And as he grew up, his journalism wrestled with a huge range of serious topics. He was a poet, a novelist, an essayist, a biographer, a historian, a dramatist, a literary critic, a social critic, a political theorist, a Christian apologist, and a debater. And during his lifetime, he had something like 4,000 essays and articles published. He wrote 3 or 4 a week for decades, and something like 80 books published, probably more since, because their collections have been published since then. And so he was very prolific, and he saw himself as a journalist just writing on any topic under the sun. But through it all, he wove a consistent Christian kind of apologetic in an unusual way. But also he engaged very strongly with the culture of his day. So some of his literary criticism is very well known, particularly his studies of Charles Dickens and Robert Browning. He was one of the leading journalists of his days. He was quite a well-known public intellectual. He wrote a column for the Daily News from 1903 to 1913, for the Illustrated London News for 30 years. In his own day, he was very influential. He debated people like George Bernard Shaw and H.G. Wells, and was perhaps the leading Christian public intellectual of his time. So he's been very much neglected more recently, but at the time he was a very prominent person. He was also famous for being just very likable and benign and incredibly absent-minded. He once sent his wife a telegram which read, "I'm in Market Harborough, where am I supposed to be?" And she replied, "Home." And he was also very fat. George Bernard Shaw said, "What a gentleman Chesterton is. I saw him give up his seat to 2 women on a bus." So he was quite a character of the time as well.